People are having the chance to go through and really kind of understand what the budget means for them. What we're seeing in the budget is that there really is nothing for renters but bad news. Rents are projected to continue to increase quite steeply. If you're a young person renting, not only do you get hit with higher rentals and very little extra support, the government have actually allowed student tuition fees to go up by probably near record levels. And that means that they're going to be hit with a double whammy from that. A minimum wage worker, which many students will be, their $2 a week tax cut is going to mean very little when you look at the size of the fee increases that they're facing and the size of the rent increases that they're facing. And the government's making the situation worse for them. So once again, the younger generation of New Zealanders are being absolutely clobbered in this year's budget. For those who aspire to own their first home, bad news in the budget. First home buyer grants being cut. And a real expectation that first home ownership will decline as a result of lack of action by the government. Housing supply, the work that we were doing there to stimulate the market to get more houses being built, that's all slowed down. The sector are writing to the government saying that they're concerned about the uncertainty that the government have created. That seems to be falling on deaf ears. As a result, we've seen the housing construction sector really slowing down over the last 6 months. That's bad news for people who want to buy a house, or for renters as well, because we know that there's a correlation between rents and housing supply too. So overall, not a great budget for people who are renting, people who are hoping to get on the home ownership ladder, and certainly not a good budget for younger New Zealanders.
The government would say that it's your spending choices that cause rents to go up in the first place. Why didn't you do more for renters?
Well, if you look at their claim that giving a $2.9 billion tax break to landlords is going to result in rents going down is clearly false. Their own budget is now projecting that rents are going to increase. So they've basically just taken $2.9 billion and given it to landlords, and the renters, the people who landlords make money off, won't benefit from that at all. So they've got choices, and they're making the wrong choices.
You never gave a sense of tax relief in your own government, and now you're asking supporters to donate their tax cuts to the Labour Party. Have you read the room?
A lot of people, that I've spoken to, who are in a position where they don't want a tax cut right now, and they don't feel they need a tax cut right now, want to see that money put to a better use. The Labour Party is doing fundraising because we actually think that this budget's got the wrong priorities, and I know that for those New Zealanders who are looking at tax cuts saying we think this is mad, we don't think this is the right time to do that, they want to do something about that. If they want to support us to change the government, then I certainly welcome that.
Should they money go to charities or frontline services instead?
How people spend their own money is up to them, but those who want to support us to change the government, I certainly welcome their support.
Are you donating your tax cut to Labour?
I still haven't calculated what it is. I don't think it's particularly a particularly large one, but I certainly don't intend to keep it.
I think it's about, would it not be about $40?
Yeah, and I certainly don't intend to keep it.
What are you going to do with it?
It'll be a mix of charity, and I will also probably be giving some of it to the campaign to change the government.
Is the tax cut only a good thing if it comes back to the Labour Party's coffers?
No, not at all. I don't think anyone's making that suggestion.
It's a pretty hypocritical thing to do, though, right? To criticise tax cuts on one day and the next day say that they're, bring them back to us.
No, because I think those who are saying, look, we don't want a tax cut right now, we're saying, well, you can put that tax cut to good use by, contributing it to the campaign to change the government.
Have you got the tone wrong, though?
No.
You've had the opportunity to meet with some students today and sort of hear about their flooding situation. Do you think, or did you hear whether or not they feel their tax cut is going to help them change their living situation or make it better?
I think what you heard from them is that they've done the calculations. They'll be lucky to get $2 a week in a tax cut. When their rents are going up by a much faster rate than that, when their student fees are going up by faster than that, when they're finding that if they're on the minimum wage is being increased by less than inflation, this is not something that's going to make a meaningful difference to them.
We've seen your MPs asking a lot of questions to the ministers in the committee of the whole house stage of the tax bill today. Have you told your MPs or had a chat with them at all about trying to slow the process down so that they're running into the weekend?
Well, we do have these changes being pushed through Parliament under urgency. This government, I think, have passed most of the legislation that they've passed since the election has been under urgency. That means it's not getting proper scrutiny, and so I think MPs using their time in the House wisely to ask questions of the government that they would normally be able to ask if it went through a proper democratic process, I think is really important, because the public don't get to scrutinise these things in the way that they otherwise would.
There's not a little bit of filibustering at all?
No, asking questions isn't filibustering. Look, I've been involved in filibustering before. This is not what it looks like.
The public service coughed up an extra $1 billion a year above and beyond what they were asked to. What's your thoughts around that?
Look, again, we're still working our way through the budget, and we'll see what the longer term consequences of some of those cuts are going to be. The public service should always be looking to make sure that where money is surplus to requirements, that it's being returned back to the government so that it can be put to better use. Every budget that we introduced, we had savings initiatives within it. So that is a regular feature of the budget process, and it's an important feature of the budget process. I'd point out that despite all of their hype, this government in this budget are borrowing more money than we did in any of our budgets, except for the budget where we delivered the wage subsidy.
You've spent a lot of time going back and forth with ministries in the past as minister. What's the thinking behind coughing up extra money? Why are they doing that?
Well, you'd have to ask those departments. I know with the backwards and forwards that I went through with government departments during the time that I was minister, I would make quite an effort to understand the consequences of any savings initiatives that they put forward. They would regularly put forward savings initiatives, and when I considered the longer term consequences of those, in some cases I would say no to those, because I felt that they would do more long term harm than good. So I think all ministers shouldn't always just accept a savings initiative because it's a savings initiative. You actually have to look at what the consequences of that are, who's going to miss out as a result of it.
What do you make of official advice saying that 9,000 families will be worse off?
Well, again, I think it just shows that the government's priorities are wrong. The fact that they're doing things that mean that families are going to be financially worse off shows that they've just haven't worked this through properly. Actually, I think it will be many, many more families than that, because even those who are getting the benefit of a tax cut will find that that evaporates very quickly as their rates go up, their rents go up, their insurance premiums go up, and for those who are mortgage holders, their mortgage rates continue to stay higher for longer.
Treasury also advised the government to delay the implementation of the tax cuts slightly to save on costs, but they didn't. What do you make of that?
I think the timing of these tax cuts is wrong. Introducing them when they are is likely to stimulate inflation, which means interest rates stay higher for longer, which means that the people who would otherwise benefit from them won't, because any money they get through a tax cut will just disappear in the form of higher costs.
The centre point policy from last budget was reversed this budget. People are going to be seeing prescription charges from July 15. That's a couple of weeks away. What impact will that have?
I think the government are making really bad decisions in the area around health. So if you look at free prescriptions, one of the big advantages of free prescriptions is it means that people who at the moment or previously weren't picking up their medicines are getting their medicines, which means they're less likely to get more sick, which means they are less likely to end up in a hospital emergency department. So it actually has a saving to the government, because we end up avoiding unnecessary healthcare that otherwise will have to be delivered. So I think it's pretty short-sighted. I also do want to note that they said they were going to cut that to fund cancer drugs. They haven't funded those cancer drugs. Now, I'll be totally frank. I think they were wrong to promise to fund a specific range of cancer drugs when that's not the way New Zealand has made decisions around which drugs get funded in the past. I think they were wrong to make that commitment. But having made that commitment to those who are suffering from cancer, to then not deliver on it is just cruel and reckless. And I really feel for those people who thought that this was actually going to be their lifeline, and that literally their lifeline, and the government have taken that away from them.
You've been told also by people living in this flat of damp sheets. Sorry, was it correct when they said no smoke alarm in the
Yeah.
room? And windows not closing. Is it appropriate to have houses like that in 2024 in New Zealand?
I think we do still have more work to do in making sure that all of our rental homes across New Zealand are of an adequate standard. We worked hard to try and tilt the playing field so that it was more level in favour of tenants. This government is tilting it steeply in favour of landlords and away from tenants, and that means that Well, yeah, but they're going to get worse because of the way the government are tilting the playing field in favour of landlords. I'm not saying that our job had finished. We still needed to do more to make sure that every rental home in the country was of an appropriate standard.
What would that more have been?
I think the healthy home standard that we put in place was a good start, but I think we could continue to, we needed to continue to look at how we could improve the healthy home standard so that, you don't have cold, damp, leaky houses that make people sick.
Would you consider a rent freeze?
Rent freezes are very difficult to impose at a central government level. Fundamentally, the way that you get rents under control is to have a lot more rental accommodation, and I do think there's a lot more the government can do on the supply side.
One of those students suggested a capital gains tax. Will you do that for them?
I know that you want to know what our tax policy is. Everybody wants to know what that is. We're working through that at the moment. I've said that things like capital gains tax are certainly on the table. They're things that we're working our way through. I do think the tax system is unbalanced at the moment, and we do need to rebalance the tax system.
What's the timeline? When will New Zealanders sort of find out what Labour is standing for?
Well, we've still got 2 more budgets from this government to go before we'd be in a position to put a budget together. So, the final shape of our tax policy will probably change over the next 2 years because, of course, the circumstances that we stand to inherit if we win the next election will change during that time as well.
You've spoken about people saying that the tax cuts don't go far enough, but there are some people who are grateful for cash in their hand. Labor wasn't offering that to people. Were you guys out of touch?
I just think tax cuts are wrong right at the moment, right at this point in the economic cycle. I'd point out that, Nicola Willis keeps banging on about 16 years since tax brackets were last adjusted. Labor was only in government for 6 of those years. The other 10 were national governments, and they chose not to adjust tax brackets during that time. Okay, thanks everybody.